Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisborach. As always, we begin with special Akoros HaTov to TorahAnytime.com for giving us the global platform to be Ma'abitz Torah in 187 countries, to Kol HaLoshen for its global reach, YouTube, Facebook, Torah Communications Network, our Zoomers, those that are here with us live in our flagship station at Agudas Yisroel Bezev of Fairways, Lakewood, and our subscribers. Welcome. Tonight we have a very, very special sponsor. Tonight's Shiur is being sponsored and dedicated by my dear Talmud, my Mispal from the Agudas Yisroel Staten Island for many, many, many years, Irving Fishbaum. He's dedicating the Shiur with a tefillah to Hashem and with the hope that in the schus of our global learning, you should be given a refuah shalema b'mehera to his brother Eliezer ben Razel. Eliezer ben Razel should have a refuah shalema b'seich sharchei Yisroel. If you want to sponsor a future Shiur, that's how these shiurim are sponsored, is through our listeners, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi at AOL.com. I tell you often that this shiur gives birth to itself. I start learning, and it almost takes me in a different direction every week. Today's shiur, unusually so, is about one subject. And that subject is, how does a person deal with hard times, with adversity, with challenges? Lo yaleinu, we shouldn't have them. So the parsha starts off, Vayidaber Elikim el Moshe. Now, Vayidaber is a harsh type of speaking. The soft is Vayomer. So Vayidaber means that Hashem spoke to Moshe in a harsh way. And this is further indicated because it says Elikim. Elikim is Midas Hadin. It doesn't say Vayidaber Hashem. It says Vayidaber Elikim. And the Paneach Raza, who I told you is one of the Rishonim, the Paneach Raza often takes note of significance in the last letters, in a sequence, in the last letters of consecutive words. Now again, we wouldn't be able to do this, but the Paneach Raza, like Rashi, was a Rishon. So he says, Vayidaber Elikim el Moshe, the last letter of Elikim is Mem, the last letter of El is Lamed, and the last letter of Moshe is Hey. So that's Mem Lamed Hey, spells Lama. Mem Lamed Hey, if you rearrange them, spells Lama. And he says that Hashem's harsh, judgmental response to Moshe was in response to what Moshe said, Lama hareyosa lama hazeh. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu was sent by Hashem to tell Paro to give us a convention in the Midbar. We should go out for 3 days. And Paro reacted very, very angrily. He says, what? I thought I stamped this out of you people? Nirpim atem, nirpim. You are still soft? Right? So therefore you're not working hard enough. They should work harder. And from now on, they're not going to get the straw, and they still have to make the same 600 bricks. We know the amount is 600 because it says perech twice. Perech is gematria 300. So 300 plus 300 is 600. They had to make 600 bricks, and if they were short a brick, they took a baby instead. And now, besides making the 600 bricks, they're going to have to find the straw. So, of course, this was overwhelming. It's been said that Paro, part of his devious decree, was he understood that the Jews would start fighting with each other over the straw. They would go looking for straw, and 100 Jews would be looking in the same place, and they would start fighting. Their babies are at stake. They would start fighting over the straw, and he knew if they would start fighting, there would be no gula. This was the nefarious, diabolical ways of Paro. So Moshe Rabbeinu's response was to Hashem, Lama hariosa lama zeh. So Hashem reacted severely to Moshe Rabbeinu's response, and we know that he issued a tremendous punishment on the spot to Moshe Rabbeinu. Because at the end of Shmais, Hashem told him, Ata tira. Now you will see Asher Esa LeParo. You will see what I'm going to do to Paro. But he said, Ata tira. You'll only see now. But when the 7 nations are punished in Eretz Yisrael, you won't see. You won't be alive anymore. So here it was decreed that Moshe Rabbeinu shouldn't go into Eretz Yisrael because he said, Lama hariosa lama zeh. Why are you doing bad to this people? As the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Kuf Yud Aleph, Chaval al da'avdin v'loy mishtachchen, woe to those that are lost and I don't find. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they never complained. And you're complaining. Now you'll say, but wait a second. That's different. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov didn't complain when it came to themselves. They didn't complain. But Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about Klal Yisrael. So what, a leader shouldn't argue on behalf of his people? Says, the Darkei Musar explains, no, you could argue on behalf of your people. But you can't say to Hashem, Lama Hare Oisan. Why are you doing bad? Hashem never does bad. Kol da'amar Ovid Rachmanu l'tov Ovid. Whatever Hashem does is for the good. As the Darkei Musar says, the Chavetz Chaim, that's Rav Yaakov Naiman. Yaakov Naiman says the Chavetz Chaim was known to say, is mutter to say marli. It's permitted to say this is bitter to me. But a person can't say rali. It's bad. Bitter you could say, but not bad. Hashem doesn't do bad. Now, even though the Chavetz Chaim says you could say that it's bitter, but we find another Paneach Raza, another thought from the Paneach Raza. Va'eira el Avram. Hashem said, I appeared to Avram. He was showing Moshe the difference between him and Avram. Va'eira el Avram. So again, the Paneach Raza takes note of the sequence of the last letters. Va'eira el Avram. The last letter of Eira is Aleph. The last letter of El is Lamed. And the last letter of Avram is Mem. That spells Elaine. Mute. Seif Tev is Elaine. And says the Paneach Raza, She'al she'osa atzmoi k'Elaine, b'kol nisyonis, because Avram made himself as a mute He didn't complain. He didn't have tinus. In all of his challenges, Zacha liyos av hamoin goyim. That's why he became the leader of nations. So, for example, although Hashem told him that he should come, hisalech ba'aretz, go and walk the whole land, it's yours. Yet when he came to bury his wife, he didn't even own a piece of burial, and he had to pay through the nose. And he didn't say, Hashem, but I thought it was my land. Hashem told him, go, v'avarechecha, I'll bless you, and then there was such a famine that he had to run down to Egypt. And there he had trouble, his wife was abducted. And he didn't say, but you promised me, v'avarechecha. And then when Hashem told him, take Yitzchak, v'aleu la'ila, even though he said to Avram, Ve'escha Yisrael l'goy gadol, now he tells him to kill his son, he didn't have any tinus. He was quiet. Elaine. This midah we found by Aaron. Okay. 2 laser-like beams came out of the Kodesh Kadoshim. They separated into 4 beams, entered the 2 nostrils of Nadav and 2 nostrils of Avihu, Aaron's 2 sons, 2 of 4 sons, and incinerated them. What was Aaron's response? Vayidoim Aaron. He was quiet. You know, one of the incredible heroes of the Holocaust, one of the superhuman paragons of modern time, was the Klozen Megureva, the Friedrich Klozen Megureva, Zechat Tzad V'Kodesh L'Bracha Schusi Yogim Aleinu. During the Holocaust, the Nazis killed his wife and 11 children. He used to say, Ich bin mehr von Rabbi Yochanan. Of course, he didn't mean he was greater than Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was a Heilige Amoira. But Rabbi Yochanan used to say, Dein Garmo das Hira Bir. This is the bone of the 10th child that I lost. So he said, Ich bin mehr von Rabbi Yochanan. He buried 11 children. He didn't bury them. They were lost in the Holocaust. He lost 11 children and a wife. So he came to America. I mean, he was busy even in Europe after the war. After all of that, he was busy burying the dead, Jewish dead, and giving them the last covet. They were strewn all over Europe. He was busy burying them. My uncle, Rav Moshe Weiss, Olav Shalom, helped him. It was a grave typhus risk, and indeed the Rebbe got typhus. He was busy then. He was busy in Fernwald, which was a DP camp. He was busy with the women, with the men, with kashrus, with learning, with making shidduchim. But he came to America, he came to Williamsburg, and he opened up a shul, and he announced that he's giving a drasha. And people flocked to hear, what could a person say who lost a wife and 11 children? What was he going to say? It was before Pesach. And he quoted from the Haggadah. Ve'era lach mispeiseses b'damayich, I saw you wallowing in blood. Ve'omer lach b'damayich chayi, b'damayich chayi, through your blood you will live, through your blood we will live. Now this literally means, in the schus of the Dam Pesach and the Dam Milah, that's the 2 schusim that they had, that they slaughtered the Korban Pesach, the god of the Egyptians, and they risked their lives to do it, and they put it on the lintel and the doorpost, and that they circumcised themselves even if they were old. But the Klozen Rebbe paraphrased it. V'aymelach b'doymai chayi, b'doymai chayi. It's the same letters, dam and doim. B'doymai chayi. With my silence I will live. The fact that I'm silent and I have no tightness on the Eibishter. I have no complaints against Hashem. So he became a great Rebbe. Oh, he became a great Rebbe. He built up, of course, Klosenberg in Union City, Klosenberg in Netanya, Klosenberg in Yerushalayim. He built up Mifal Hashas. He built a fully Torah hospital, Laniado Hospital. He became a great. That's like the Paneach Rosa says, B'schus Ilaim, being quiet. It's interesting that there's a mimer in the Gemara that we talk about from time to time. Ma nosoi shel adam ba'olam hazeh yaseh atzmoi ke'ilein. What's a person's profession in this world? Make yourself like a mute. Now the intent of that Gemara is different. The intent of that Gemara is to know not to answer back. Because if a person that doesn't answer back maintains the peace. That's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. Toiva d'shamei v'odish. Fortunate is the person who listens and doesn't react. Cholfa bishtamei, 100 bad things passed him by. It says, Eina olam miskayim, the world is upheld only b'misha boilim piv b'shas meriv. Somebody that shuts his mouth during a time of conflict. Those are the people that maintain peace. You know, a couple, if each one answers the other back, it becomes a conflagration. But if one of them is able to be quiet, as it says, Shimon Manaya Aimer Kol Yomai Gadalti Ben Achachamim V'Lei Matzasi L'Guf Tov Mishtika. That's true. But now we see there's another kavanah. And that is a person who doesn't have tainus. He's yasa atzmai ke'ilein. Now we should never be tested. But we need to know what the Chayvis Halvavas says. It's very important to understand this. The Chayvis Halvavas says in Sha'ar B'Tochen, he says it's important to know this Yesod HaChayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu oyev oisanu yoser mimasha anu oyevim es atzmeinu. Hashem loves us more than we love ourselves. It's good to always remember that. Umeitiv lanu yoser, and He does good for us more mimasha anu choshvim leheitav latzmeinu, than what we think that we're doing good for ourselves. V'tamid choshev aleinu l'tayv, He's always thinking to do good for us. V'loi mesiach datoi meitanu, and He's never distracted from looking after each and every one of us, especially Yidden. It says Toiv Hashem lakol v'rachamav al kol ma'asav. Chavis Halvavas says we should know that Hashem loves us more than we love ourselves. Now, but what about the taina of Moshe Rabbeinu? I mean, it's a very strong taina. You send me, and I come, and the matters become much worse. The fact of the matter is, the matters become much worse. Until now they had straw, and now they don't have straw, and now they're fighting with each other, and it's now more babies are being buried in the walls of Pithom and Ramses. So, Lam Hariyai Salam Hazeh. So the Medrash Tanchuma says in chapter 6, Medrash Tanchuma is, of course, one of the authoritative midrashim that Rashi quotes. The Medrash Tanchuma says there's two aspects. First of all, we know that the bris bein habesarim is that we were supposed to go out after 400 years. It's only 210 years. That means that all these people were to die in slavery, they, their children, and their grandchildren. And now, because they had to work harder, that intense pressure, like we say it in the Haggadah, that pressure, that kushi ashibud, enabled them to consider, like they did, the 190 years work now. So instead of dying in slavery, they were saved. How could you call that bad? It looked bad. But it was really a tremendous salvation for them. They became the generation that would see Hashem at Har Sinai and accept the Torah and have the miracles of the man and the be'er. How could it be bad? Furthermore, says the Tanchuma, another element. You can't punish Goyim at shetamale sa'asam until their limit is full. Before that, you can't punish them. The limit of Paro and his men were not full until they did this horrific act of even taking away the straw. Without that, they couldn't have been punished. There couldn't have been a makkos. So this which Moshe Rabbeinu unleashed wasn't bad. It was the ultimate good for them. You'll say, tell it to the babies that were put into the walls of Pithom and Ramses. Those babies that were put in the walls of Pithom and Ramses wouldn't have been good anyway. That's what we learn out from Micha. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, why are they going into it? They wouldn't have been good. He says, I'll let you pull out one. So he pulled out Micha. That's why he's called Micha, because he was mocked, he was crushed. And Micha caused us so much problems with the pesel Micha. It says that when they were crossing the Yam, and they had the pesel Micha, V'amayim lehem chayma. Chayma is written chaser vav, defective. Because Amayim lehem chayma, the waters were raging because of the pesel Micha. So this is what really happened. As a matter of fact, this is the reason why they didn't listen to Moshe. V'shamu el Moshe mikaitzer ruach. Says the Bayis Neman, the gematria of mikaitzer is 430. Mem is 40, Kuf is 100, that's 140. Tzadi is 90, that's 230, and Reish is 200, it's 430. Now, it says that they were supposed to be redeemed after 430 years, because first would be the 30 years until Yitzchak was born, and then it says Kigeria Zaracha, so Yitzchak had to be born, and then 400 years. So they said it's not 430 years from when Yitzchak is born. We're missing 190 years. That's why they didn't believe him. And by the way, that's when Dasan and Aviram always had a taina, and wherever we were in the midbar, and things didn't go our way, and we didn't have water to drink. So he said, Ein Hashem b'kirbeinu. How could they say Ein Hashem b'kirbeinu? They got out with the makkos and the splitting the Red Sea, but they felt they weren't supposed to leave for another 190 years. Be that what it may, this is the idea that really what Hashem did was not Midas Hadin, but Midas Harachamim. And that's Vayidaber Elikim El Moshe. Hashem said, that which you think is Elikim, Vayomer Elav Ani Hashem, it's really Midas Harachamim. It's because of this that this generation won't die in slavery, nor will their children and grandchildren die in slavery, but they'll get out of Egypt. And this is one of the reasons that we say Shema Yisroel Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Shema Yisroel, listen Yisroel, Hashem, which is Midas HaRachamim, Elokeinu, that which looks like Midas Adin, Hashem Echad, it's all Rachamim. You just don't see it right away. Kol David Rachmana L'Tava Avid. In the Sefer Yalkut Tzipurim, it cites that Rabbeinu Nisim Gaon was one of the Gaonim. This is pre-Rishonim. Rabbeinu Nisim Gaon tells of a story of the great Rabbi Shiur ben Levi. Rabbi Shiur ben Levi was from the greatest of the great. Rabbi Shiur ben Levi asked Hashem, please tell me, Mipnei ma rasha v'toiv loi v'tzadik v'raloi. Why do bad things happen to a tzaddik and the rasha seems to have success? Again, how do we grip with good people having bad times? Lo aleinu. How do we grasp it? Now, the truth of the matter is that one would ask, what's Rabbi Shiur ben Levi asking this? It's a Gemara in Brachos that Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, and the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, sorry, it's too difficult for you to understand. Hashem answered Moshe, V'chanoisi es asher ochain, v'richamti es asher arachim. I give graciousness to those that I want to be gracious to. I have mercy for those I want. It's too complex for you. If it's too complex for Moshe Rabbeinu, what's Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, who of course knew he was very great. He was the greatest of the great, but he was much smaller than Moshe Rabbeinu. So what's he asking? I think the answer to this is that Rabbi Shiur ben Levi felt his generation needed it more. The further we get from Sinai, the more we need support. I compare this to the fact that when Levi Kletsky, when he was mutilated and murdered, Reb Chaim Kanievsky sent out a letter to the world that this can only be understood b'Toras HaGilgul, with the knowledge that there are reincarnations. And this had to be because of a previous reincarnation. Now, in generations past, the Gedolim didn't talk about Gilgul. Rav Miller, when he was asked in a shiur to talk about Gilgul, in the Thursday night Q&A, he was many times asked about Gilgul, and he didn't answer. He says he doesn't talk about it because in the entire Shas, Gilgul isn't mentioned. And in a pamphlet that the family put out, celebrating Rav Miller's 10th yahrzeit, they published another thing that he said, that he didn't talk about it because he didn't hear his Rebbeim in Slobodka talk about it. His Rebbe was Rav Isaac Sher. He didn't hear it from his Rebbeim. So why did Reb Chaim talk about it? Because our generation needs it more. Our generation is weaker in Emunah. So they need it more. So Rabbi Shiur ben Levi felt that his generation, I believe that there's a pshat, Rabbi Shiur ben Levi felt his generation needed and how to grapple with this. How to grapple with good people having hard times. So Hashem sent Rabbi Shiur, it's really a fascinating story. Fasten your seatbelts. Hashem sent Rabbi Shiur ben Levi Eliyahu Navi. And Rabbi Shiur ben Levi said to Eliyahu Navi, could I follow you around and see what you do as an agent of Hashem? So Eliyahu made a condition. You could follow me around until you ask me why I'm doing something. When you ask me why I'm doing something, we have to part ways. So Rabbi Shiur ben Levi agreed. So they first came to a wooden hut in the field. ramshackle wooden hut. In front of it was grazing a lone cow, and they knocked on the door they appeared as beggars. They needed a place to stay and some food. It was answered by an old man and woman, Jewish man and woman, and they saw it was a very poor hut, but they welcomed them in royally, and they shared what they have, and they gave them a corner to sleep. In the morning, Eliyahu left, thanking them, and as he was leaving, he turned to Hashem and said, "Please, Hashem, let their cow die." And they left, and not far away, the Rabbi Shimon Levi heard the woman crying, "The cow died, what are we going to do? It's our only source of income." And of course, Rabbi Shimon Levi was mystified. Here, they were so charitable, Eliyahu and Navi should take away their source of income. He didn't ask. Then they traveled, and they came that evening to a rich man's house. And the rich man, the butler let them in, and they were eating a sumptuous repast. And the rich man was very annoyed because he had a wall that was falling, and he had ordered workers to come to fix it, and they didn't show up. So he was in a very bad mood. And he said, "Who let these vagabonds in here? What do we need? We have to close these doors better." And finally, when they said they had no place to stay, he let them sleep on some stone benches in the backyard and gave them some bread and water. The next morning they left, and to Rabbi Shimon Levi's astonishment, Eliyahu Navi prayed a miracle should happen and the wall should be repaired. And the wall was repaired. They then stopped the next night in a very wealthy shul. As they come in, everybody had an assigned seat, and there was nowhere to sit, nobody gave them a seat. They had to go all the way into the back in the corner of the shul and daven. And then nobody offered them to invite them to their house. Rather, the gabbai brought them some bread and water and told them they could sleep on the bench. The next morning, as Eliyahu Hanavi was leaving, he blessed them that they should have many heads, many chiefs in the shul. They then went to another shul the next night, and they treated them royally and brought them home and gave them a wonderful meal and proper lodging. And the next morning, Eliyahu left and said they should only have one head. Finally, Rabbi Shimon Levi says, "That's it. I don't get it. To me, this is all Purim. It's v'nahapachu." He didn't say that, but he said, he says, "This doesn't make any sense to me at all." So Eliyahu told him, "Well, we'll have to part ways now because you asked, but before I leave, I'll explain to you what you saw." When we were in that home, the hut, with the old man and woman, I knew that Hashem, the Malach HaMavis, was supposed to take the woman's life the next day. I prayed to Hashem that he should take the cow instead, impoverish them, ani choshev kameis, and that should be instead of her life. And I saved her life. When we came to that rich man's house, I knew that under that wall was a magnificent treasure that would have made this man the richest man in the town. And I didn't want him to find it. He doesn't deserve it. It's not charitable. So I asked Hashem that the wall should become so strong that it should never fall down. He'll never find it. When we came to the first city, they didn't even give us a seat. And they were so not charitable. I prayed that they should have many heads Because if they have many people that think that they're chief, they'll never get along with one another. They'll never be mevater to one another. There'll be so much strife there that they'll never have blessing and good. When I came to the other shul and they treated us royally, I blessed them that they should have one head, that they'll all listen to, and they'll always have peace and blessing. And by the way, just as an aside, this lesson that the charitable nature of a shul has repercussions on that people will get along in the shul. That's a linkage. That's a fascinating linkage. And it's a discussion for another time. But let's not lose sight of what's happening over here. What Rabbi Shua ben Levi was revealed to by Eliyahu Navi is that all is not what we see. Mishpatecha tohim rabba. Your judgments are very deep. And what is before our eyes is many times the opposite. Somebody that suffers a terrible turn in business could be saving the life of his spouse. What we see before our eyes is not what we think. What we see Ra could be the most incredible good. And we remember, like what the Chavis Havava says, that is, the Rabbeinu Shalom wants to do good for us more than we want good for ourselves. You know, there's another pasuk. V'ra'isa es achuroi. You could see me afterwards, but afanai lo yiro. Beforehand, you won't necessarily see me. The Yitzis Pnei HaTorah tells a remarkable story from the Yom Kippur War. There was a soldier that asked his commander, he was a Dati soldier, a Fruma soldier, he asked his commander for 12-hour leave to go home Erev Yom Kippur to ask his parents Mechila. It's a big thing to ask your parents Mechila. So he wanted to ask his parents Mechila and to get a blessing from his parents. Parents give their child a blessing. And he would get right back to the base. And so he went home. And it's not easy to travel home. Erev Yom Kippur, he has to fast. But he wanted to ask his parents Mechila and get their blessing. So he came home. He rushed back to the Tachana HaMerkazit to, take a bus to get back to the base. And he was arrested by a soldier. There was something wrong with his uniform. There was a detail wrong with his uniform. And the soldier was a stickler. And he said, you have the wrong dress code. And he arrested him and put him in jail for 1 day. He told him, today is Yom Kippur, you're putting a Jew in jail. Yom Kippur, he didn't care. Put him in jail. And the whole day in jail, he couldn't understand. He came home to do a mitzvah, to ask his parents Mechila, to get a bracha from his parents. Why would the Rebbeinu Shalom do this to him? Not knowing that while he was in jail, they broke out the Yom Kippur War, and to the spot where he was supposed to be, on the Sinai, the Egyptians killed almost his entire battalion in the sudden attack. And he was saved. So that's literally the meaning of Ra'isa Asachura. You could see it after the fact. But a Fanai Lo Yiro, beforehand you can't understand it. I had this Maisa. My first Rebbetzin in Liba, Basar Baran, Zechet, Tzedekis, Avrachas, Chusi Yagan Aleinu. we would go out usually twice a week to a coffee shop in Staten Island. We like to go there, run by a good friend of mine, Mickey Simintov. He has a lovely daughter by the name of Carmela. She worked by Cantor Fitzgerald. And she was let go from Cantor Fitzgerald with anti-Semitic traces. The family was very upset about it. She was let go a month before 9/11. Everybody in Cantor Fitzgerald died because Cantor Fitzgerald was above the plains. No one from Cantor Fitzgerald survived. They saw it afterwards. But we have to understand that. We have to understand that called the Ovid Rahmana L'Tava Ovid. This is uncharacteristic that I'm dedicating a shiur to one topic. I like to usually speak on a whole variety of topics. But this idea that we should understand that that which we think is bad is not bad. The Rebbeinu Shem doesn't do bad. Yaakov Avinu lost many years of his life because he told Paro, Ma'at v'roim yemei shnei chaya. You can't say that. The Chavetz Chaim says you could say mar, but not ra. We have to know that we won't understand a lot of it. You look at, how could she know that her cow died because she was supposed to die? How could she know that? How did she know that? How can a man know that the wall that was miraculously built was the worst thing that could have happened to her? How can he know that? There's a lot that we don't know. Shom Shvadron tells a story. It's brought down in the Oitzis HaTorah. It's a different sefer than Oitzis Panini HaTorah. This is a famous story. Many of my Talmidim heard this story from me in other shiurim, but it's worth reviewing. We know that during the beginning of the war, when already the Nuremberg laws came out, even before Kristallnacht, people of foresight saw the handwriting in the wall, and many Jews from Germany and Austria fled to England. And they were in England, but when the Germans declared war against the British, so those of German nationality were suspected of being spies, and the Germans put them in boats and sent them to Australia. Many of those boats didn't make it. Many of the boats were torpedoed by the Germans. 30 years later, this incredible thing came out. One of the boatloads of Jews that were taken to Australia, the captain was ferociously anti-Semitic. So after they left the port, the captain said, "You're now in my control. I want everybody's suitcases." And he took all the Jewish suitcases. This was whatever they had left in the world. And he threw them overboard. And the Jews, not only were they being sent into who knows what kind of exile in Australia, these are German Jews who already were exiled to England, and now they're being sent to Australia. Now everything was thrown overboard. I mean, they were in the depths of despair. Only 30 years later did it come out. It was revealed by a professor in college who did research that this particular boat was in the scope of a German U-boat to torpedo. But they saw all the suitcases being thrown overboard, and they recovered some of them. They wondered what's going on. And they had German writing because they were German Jews. And they didn't torpedo the boat because they understood it had German prisoners. They torpedoed the boat on the way back. So the captain got his deserts. But Yisroel of Shvadron says that you see so amazingly, I mean, it's so amazing that which filled them to the depths of despair, that all their worldly possessions was being thrown away. I mean, what worse could happen to them? They're being exiled to Australia, everything is thrown away. There's such a terrible thing, saved their lives. And it made me realize, I've talked about this thread in a completely different area, but what it says in Slichas Tinyana of Bahab, Mimaka Atzma Misakana Ratiya, from the wound itself Hashem fashions the cure. This is mamish a example of this rule. Remember we said that when you get a cut, the wound fashions the cure. It starts healing it from the wound. And a person's fever, which is the wound, cures him because the heat is therapeutic. And we said that the Maka Atzma V'Sakan Ratiya is that Paro was the Maka, and from his own home came Moshe Rabbeinu, and Basia saved Moshe. So the Maka Atzma V'Sakan Ratiya. Achashverosh was the Maka, and from his own house was Esther. That's true. But here you have another manifestation of this. Mimaka Atzma, the Maka itself, that their suitcases were thrown overboard. Misakin Ratiya, that was the cure. Because of the suitcases, they were saved. It's such an example of Mimaka Atzma, Misakin Ratiya. And it's the same thing, this soldier, the Maka that he was put into jail, on Yom Kippur, saved him. Sakin Ratiya saved him from dying in the sudden attack of the Yom Kippur War. There's a sefer called Chut HaMeshulish. Very fascinating thing. It talks about the Chassam Sofer in his youth. The Chassam Sofer, who would grow up to be from the Gedolei Adar, Chassam Sofer says that when he was learning in yeshiva, he ate kest. They didn't have dormitories or dining rooms, but he was from, of course, one of the promising Bachrim. So he ate kest by a very, very wealthy Jew. In those days, they had forced billeting of soldiers. And there were French soldiers billeted to this rich Jew's house. And one French soldier took a very strong liking to the Chassam Sofer. And he asked the Chassam Sofer, he saw he was very intelligent, he asked the Chassam Sofer, he wants him to teach him certain things about the way of the land and everything. And in lieu of that, he would do the Chassam Sofer's laundry and other chores. It was very distasteful for the Chassam Sofer to have to learn with a guy, so to speak, but he didn't have a choice, so he did it. 30 years later, when the Chassam Sofer was already Rav in Preshberg, he was arrested as a spy, trumped up charges, and arrested as a spy. He was brought to military court, and who was the commandant that he came in front of? This French soldier. Of course, the French soldier says, "You're no spy. You're the best person I know." And the Chassam Sofer said at the time, I didn't understand why the Rebbeinu Shalom, I'm busy learning, and every second counted, and why the Rebbeinu Shalom made me busy with this Frenchman. So Verisa Esachura, I see afterwards, Ufanai lo yiro, he said that about the incident. You know, Rebbe Elia Lapian, the great Rebbe Elia Lapian, we can't imagine what Rebbe Elia Lapian was like. Do you know that Rebbe Elia Lapian used to speak and give a drasha for 3 to 4 hours? And he captivated audiences. He would say, I think I'm talking too long, because his feet began to hurt from standing. He was hypnotic. Rabbi Elia Lapian says that that's pshat in a pasuk of Shlomo HaMelech. It says that Shlomo, it sounds like poetry, that Hashem is mashkiach min hachalonos. He watches us from windows, meitzitz min hacharakim. He peers at us from the cracks. So is just that just poetry? So Rebbe Elia Lapian says no. When Hashem is looking at us from the window, He sees us and we see Him. That's when He does clearly good things to us. But there are times that He's peering to us from the cracks. He sees us, we don't see Him. What He does looks not so good. But He's still watching us. We can't see Him. We can't identify that it's good. That's the meaning of Meitzis Min HaCharakim. I want to share with you something that Rav Shach gave chizuk to a yosin. But before I do, I once again want to thank my dear Talmud Irving Fishbaum for dedicating tonight's share, for the schus of his brother. He should have a refuah. Eliezer ben Rezel should have a refuah shalema b'sech shachali Yisroel b'meheira. And I want to invite the Olam. We're having recently a lot of sponsors from my inner circle, from my Zoomers, but there's a whole wide audience. I know whenever I go out, I listen to you on TorahAnytime.com, on Kololoshin. I see you on YouTube. Think about sponsoring a share. To sponsor a share, which is heard all over the world, is $360. 718-916-3100. 718-916-3100. You could text me, rmmwsi@aol.com. Also, you could join my Zoom Daf Yomi from Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. New York, New Jersey time. And it's very easy. Just go on Zoom and punch in zoomdaf.com, and presto, you're with us. On Motzei Shabbos, we learn Tudlat at 7:45. Also, there's another share sponsored by the Rubin family called For the Shabbos Table that I usually record sometime on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. They told Rav Shach about a orphan that was orphaned from his father and mother. Lo Yaleinu Rachmana Litzlan. And they asked Rav Shach to give him chizuk. So Rav Shach met with the young man and said, what could I say? It's terrible not to have a father and mother. I feel for you. He says, I also was orphaned from my father and mother at a very young age. And I want to give you chizuk that we often don't realize what is a blessing for us. He says, when I was in yeshiva in Europe, in Poland, and I became of age, so many of my friends that had parents, and the parents had money, they were making great shidduchim, and they would come back and say they got this beautiful house, this garden apartment, this corner apartment, a great neighborhood. And then I got engaged, and I didn't get anything. And my friends told me, you should break the engagement. You're a promising bacher. You're one of the best bachers in yeshiva. And you should hold out. What are you going to do? What are you going to do without a home? But he said that he felt that the shidduch was from Shemayim, and he wouldn't break the shidduch. He said shortly afterwards came reports that there was going to be a world war. He says, I didn't have a house. It wasn't hard for me to make the decision that it's not safe here. And I fled with my new bride to Eretz Yisroel. My friends, all of them, they owned houses. It wasn't easy to pick up and leave. They couldn't get money from their houses anymore. And over there in Israel, they wouldn't have homes. They wouldn't be established. They stayed, and they all perished. Did I know that the fact that I was the only one that didn't get a house would be the reason why I would survive and they would perish? Afterwards, I knew. Re'isa es achurai, ufanai lo yero. But kol da'avid rachmano l'tava avid. We have to know that there's no way to understand it. Mishpatecha tahaim rabba. There's no way to understand it. But let's remember that Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, both Hashem, which is clearly Rachman, and Elokeinu, what looks like din, really Hashem Echad. It's really Midas HaRachman. Let's remember that Hashem loves us more than we love ourselves. A person could say it's bitter, because he doesn't understand. But he can't say that it's bad. In the schus of learning about this, we should merit that Hashem should do only for us that which is clearly good. That's what we say in our davening, that Hashem should be Gaimel Chasadim Tovim. V'sigmaleinu Chasadim Tovim. He should grant us, what do you mean? What's a Chesed Tov? Is there such a thing as a Chesed Ra? The answer is that the Rav Shach didn't get a house. That's not a Chesed Tov. The fact that the soldier was in jail for Yom Kippur, that's not a Chesed Tov. These aren't Chesadim Tovim, but they are Chesadim. We ask Hashem for Chesadim Tovim. It should be clear that it's a Chesed. And in the schus of our learning, we should merit that. And I want to thank all of you for joining us, and wish you a good night and a good Shabbos. And now, we're going to do the Mishnah Yomis.